Here we are at Beaumont Wines, Compagnes Drift, and we're doing some milling today. We've just started up. We've probably got about 4 revs per minute on the wheel here, and it's running very smoothly. We've got plenty of water today. We haven't had to add. This is a natural overflow of the dam, and it seems to be giving us the right sort of speed. Mario has painted the launder. He's done a lot of maintenance work here, and we've lost a lot of the leaks of the water, so we're getting the maximum benefit of the water that we've got. There's the lever that works the trapdoor, which was seized up, and we've dismantled it, taken it off, dismantled it, freed off the hinges, greased them, and now the trapdoor should work from the inside after a long time of being seized up. It's a glorious day to be doing this. A little bit of a northwester. Here's the Lister engine I brought and connected up to the external drive. But since the water wheel has worked, we've never actually had to use it ever. The water runs away here in the tail race, around the tree, and back into the stream that it would be running down anyways for the rest of the week. Sebastian's got a nice fire going in the oven. They're going to be baking later, and I've got the scythes all packed out there as a demonstration of cutting wheat. Mill's running a little bit slowly at the moment, but it's doing a lot of hard work. I think it hasn't quite started pumping out the meal yet. Okay, we've been running for about an hour now, and the gap between the ton and the stones is filled up, so the sweeper is now kicking out as fast as it's being milled. This is a Vitruvian mill running off the pit wheel there, and the pit wheel has another pinion there which is running that pulley, which is running that belt up into the roof there, and that is running everything else, including the Stamford mill, about 100 years old, and the sifter, which we deliberately brought in because we should have had one in here. There would have been one attached to the Stamford. Shush. And here is the Goodman mill, also about 100 years old, which we're running with a panel out off the side of the ton so that people can see how the stone mill works. Apart from that, we've got the grain elevator, and we've got the other elevator running, and upstairs there's also a grain cleaner. The sun's now catching the buckets nicely. And I really must give that Lister a good clean one of these days. Lister comes from 1939, CE. A little bit of water running over the end of the launder there, doesn't it? We're running at a cracking pace now, about 4.5 revs a minute. I counted just now. There's plenty of water. It's actually running over the top of the flute. So we've actually never really had this much water coming over ever before. But it's good to see what we can do. We've got the stones quite close together, and we're producing meal that is really almost like talcum powder. Well, we've never milled with this much water before. It's actually running over the top of the sluice, and we seem to be almost full. The launder at the top end, and this little mill pond is now holding water much better than it did before after a lot of work in this last week. Normally it was getting past the wall here and pouring out of the bank lower down here. So the water wheel is actually going flat out at the moment. We're probably doing about 5 revs a minute. There's a lot of water spilling over the end of the launder, and if I can't reduce the amount of water coming over the sluice or at the dam outlet, because it's running over fully there. But I could close the trapdoor slightly above the wheel. The quality of the meal is very nice on the inside. Running very, very smoothly. We're not feeding too much. It's a healthy flow, and this is very, very fine. It's almost like talcum powder if I feel it. Yeah, really just like talcum powder. Finer than it really needs to be, but there's no harm, and we're not in any great rush to produce. We've bagged about 23 kilos so far. And here's Mario putting another bucket of grain in the top, the hopper, before it empties completely. We're into the second bag of 25 kilos. And Rachel's doing the sitting and bagging and weighing.
Very important job.
Indeed. Somebody called her the flower girl this morning.
Slowly but surely, I'm getting it right.
There we are. Another little bit. That's it. We run the Goodman just for show. We've got a panel taken out of the side of the ton here, so that people can actually see what a rotating runner stone and a still bedstone look like. And of course the mill's got everything else that the mill needs. It's got the hopper, the shoe, which is vibrating there with the damsel running against the wrap, held together by the miller's willow here. That then gets set by the twist peg here, the angle of the shoe, and that lets the grain either faster or slower into the eye of the stone. Once it's in the eye of the stone, it gets caught between the runner and the bedstone, and whole grains in the middle come out as finely milled meal on the outside. The meal comes out at any point on the circumference periphery, and it would normally have a sweeper attached to the runner stone that would sweep that gap between the stones and the tun and bring the meal around to the meal spout and fill the bag. Once the bag's full, the miller would push this plate in and stop the flow for a moment while changing the bag. When the new empty bag's attached, you would then pull this out again, and the meal will flow again. This is the sifter. It wasn't in the mill originally, but we bought it and installed it and connected it up to one of the spare pulleys. It doesn't get used, it's just here for show, but the way it works is that it's fed in with a rough mixture of meal in an inlet at the top at the right hand end, and then it gets sieved either through the very fine stuff, goes through this very fine mesh, and that then goes into a bag there. So that would be sort of the cake flour, and then the coarser through a mesh, which is not in position at the moment. It keeps falling out, and then there's a third stage. Each of those has an outlet, and what doesn't go through any of the meshes tails over, as they call it, at the end here into a bag. So that would be the bran that did get milled properly. I've just finished making a screen there to prevent people putting fingers into the pulley there or hair getting caught. And yeah, but in fact the meal that's made on the Vitruvian mill here is so fine that it would all go through the first screen there. So there's no point in using it. It would be fun to try it out, but there wouldn't be any point really. Then there's the Stamford mill, which we used in the beginning when we were running with the engine. It makes a very varied product with bran at one end and very, very fine cake flour at the other end. And that would be an ideal mill to feed through a sifter like I've just been at. And we feel that maybe this mill did feed into this short elevator, perhaps down to there, and then up through the ceiling, and then back into a sifter that quite likely stood right here. You can see something stood here, but if we were to put something here, it would really get in the way of everything, of being able to see the milling machinery working like this. This is the upstairs floor. There's the grain cleaner, which we don't use, but we could. Makes a bit of a mess, but we'd rather use the winnower, which we also bought in the room next door. But this is the line shafting on the other side, which can either be driven by the water wheel as it is at the moment, that twisted belt over there, or it can be driven by the engine through the fast and loose pulleys at the end. This is the workings of the Vitruvian mill, the hopper, looking into the light of the from the window there, the hopper and the shoe and the damsel and the rat and the miller's willow coming down from the top, and that is feeding into the eye of the Vitruvian mill. So this is the mill that we're actually using, And we've got to set the feed, which is not particularly fast, into the eye of the stone at the same rate as it's coming out, so that we've always got grain between the eyes, between the stones. I had to make all this furniture, as it's called, because there was nothing here. So that's the ton, and the T framework and the two long bars there are called the horse. The shoe, the damsel was missing, and the hopper. Because this is a wine farm, I wanted the ton to look like a wine barrel, and looked through James Walton's book looking for a mill that had a wine barrel type ton, and found this picture. This was Compagnes Drift in Bredasdorp. It's now a ruin, unfortunately, but because James Walton took these photographs and also some drawings of the mill, I was able to copy it as faithfully as I could, including, for example, he drew a damsel exactly like this, with 4 prongs like that, so I was able to copy that. So this is as close a copy of Compagnes Drift as I could manage at the time. Anybody who says that a flat belt pulley has to have a crown on it, sort of curved down to both sides, has obviously never seen this setup. This is a pulley which is almost 90 degrees away from the pulley at the bottom. Both the pulleys are parallel, and the belt does not touch the floor where it goes through. Yet it's actually very difficult to get the belt off this pulley once it's running. Here's the fast and loose. So the belt that I'm holding now is the one that comes from the engine. That is on the loose pulley. The fast pulley is fast on, attached to the rest of the line shafting right down the building. So if one starts, or when one starts the engine up, where if there was no water, you'd start it with the belt on the loose pulley, and then this force, called striking gear, guides the belt from the loose pulley across to the fast pulley, and it engages just like a clutch on a motor car. That operation can actually be done from outside through this control shaft there, and it's got 2 arms on it where it comes out of the wall on the outside, and you can pull one to engage the clutch and the other to disengage. Very fancy. This is the top of the main elevator, and it has 3 chutes coming for it. One chute which divides into 3 ways. One goes into the stock, into the grain cleaner. As I said, we don't actually use the grain cleaner, but it shakes like this, and the very big particles like stones and sticks get shaken over the end there. The grains themselves go through the eyes, and then there's a second screen below which is very fine, and the sand and dust goes through that. The drive to this also goes up to the main elevator, and that then it needs to be running, the water wheel needs to be running at 6 revs a minute before it works properly. The grain comes up there, it gets thrown out, and when this is closed with the steel plate there, and this is closed, somewhere there should be a wooden plug. Where is it? I don't know. and then if that's also closed, then the grain goes down there and it goes through that shaking chute all the way to the hopper of the Vitruvian mill. We have worked it, it does work, but we can't get the last of the grain out and it attracts the rats, unfortunately. This is the upstairs, the fast and loose pulley right at the very end. The drive, the second one, or apart from the pair at the end, is the drive which is bringing the power up from the water wheel. The next one is driving the Stamford mill. The next one is going to the short elevator there. The next one is going to the grain cleaner and then up to the main elevator. Here one can see that there's a bit of